the voice of growth, mastering the mind and market.
Wow, this bozo has no idea what he's talking about. Failing a lot and suffering along the way. Where the prompt is where the value is being captured. Apps in ChatGPT, that's going to be a very big thing. The future's already here, it's just not distributed evenly. We're all going to freaking die if we don't get with the program because someone else will eat your lunch. Embrace the suck.
Blaine Wilson.
In the flesh.
Indeed. So we were talking here in the pre-meeting about how we met. Do you remember?
Yes. Incredibly embarrassing. Once upon a time when I was a fledgling mechanical designer, knew just enough to help others, not enough to help myself. I had some idea for a product that was out of my segment, out of my area of expertise, but it just seemed eminently feasible that, yeah, someone should be able to wrench that together. And I remember around the corner off on Grant, you had a startup or a consultancy. I remember at the time you were working on a device that cleaned solar panels automatically. And I walked in like, I have an idea for a product I would like to develop. And you were kind enough, I remember you pulled like 2 or 3 heads into the meeting and got about 5 minutes in and went, wow, this bozo has no idea what he's talking about. And kind of like thanked me for my time. And I remember the conclusion of, well, wait a minute, no, you don't understand. I just need like a software developer, an electrical engineer, and a mechanical engineer. We can bang this out. And you're like, great, 40 grand. And I will allocate the resources to do that. And since that time, after bumping into you there, we kind of swam the same circles in entrepreneurship and startup circles. I don't know if you remember Gangplank.
I do.
Or Startup
It's all coming back.
And yeah, I would just like kind of see like, hey, how you doing? And you're like polite. And then recently it was a tech mixer for Arizona Tech Council.
Yeah.
And ran into you there. And
yeah, so I think it's all coming back to me, which is, running in different circles is such a powerful thing. People don't understand. They basically severely underestimate the power of running in different circles. Mm-hmm. So they did a study. I'll find the reference.
The people,
where they looked at what were the top markers of success. They looked at, were you born with a golden spoon in your mouth or a silver spoon in your mouth? Were you...
You're talking about the Harvard 50-year longitudinal study.
Yes.
Where they recognize that raw intelligence is not correlated to health, longevity, success, or happiness, but personal connections, who you know, not what you know. And oddly enough, the degree of warmth in the relationship with your mother. Those are the 2 takeaways.
Yeah. It's not that one, but I do know that one as well. But this other one had, what they found out was there's 2 main issues that drove the success of an individual. And the first of which is grit. Being able to get knocked on the ground, get back up and say, can I have another? That. The second one is being able to navigate new circles. Mm-hmm. So if you run with the same 10 people all the time, your world's going to be limited to about that much. If you run with 10 groups of 10 people, it could be in real estate, could be in fintech, could be in software, could be beer drinking buddies, could be hatchet throwing guys, could be golf buddies, and all that just opens up. So you can start making connections between your golf buddy and a software guy that needs somebody.
Yep. And it's a skill. It's one of those things you pick up doing, say, outside sales or really any kind of sales position, to just like a schmooze ability. And it's not like schmoozing to be cheesy or deceptive, but the ability to socially float.
Yeah, exactly.
Get by.
So yeah, it's all coming to me now. So one thing I've always admired in you, and I continue to admire, is that you are insatiably curious. Mm-hmm. You're curious. You're like that terrier that's digging into the ground trying to find the rat, and we don't find it, you just keep on digging.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know you have got lots of rat holes out there that you've dug.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Failing a lot and suffering along the way. I think Jensen Wang talked about that. What I wish upon all of you is suffering and the character that develops from that so that you can learn to persist.
Yeah, suffering and discomfort are like these things we try everything possible not to suffer, not to have our children suffer or fail or whatever.
No, see, in my household, we're suffer maxing. I actively look for opportunities to suffer with them because shared suffering is really what builds the bonds.
Yeah.
And
miserless company.
Yeah. Embrace the suck.
Embrace it. So we're doing something very different today. In the podcast, I usually do a monologue 1 day a week. I produce a monologue by myself. I have a small team. We collect information on what's relevant, something cool to talk about, and we come up with basically some bullet points and XYZ. Then I do some guest interviews where I bring people from the outside to really share their experience, share their expertise, share some stories. And we're breaking the mold today because of a conversation you and I had a few days ago, last week, when you were in San Diego, was it? Or you in LA?
San Francisco.
San Francisco, that's right. For the
OpenAI Dev Day.
And that lit a fire under my butt from your energy. And I thought we have to have this today. So we're going to turn this one around really quickly and get this out there because it's so important to our audience of business owners, entrepreneurs, curious people about business. The podcast is about the mind and the market. Mm-hmm. And what I see in this, as this unfolds today, is that the market is out there. This is consumer behavior is the market, and we have trends unfolding, all that. But the mind is the mindset, right? And there's another piece to the mind, not only the mindset, but also elements that help to feed the mind, enable the mind. And some things you said the other day were like, oh, this is going to really expand our minds. Mm-hmm. So with that, you want to start talking about the event, and then we'll go kind of from there.
So last week was OpenAI's Dev Day. OpenAI, as I'm sure everyone knows, is the creator of ChatGPT, where, was it 2 or 3 short years ago, they launched ChatGPT 3 or 3.5, and what was actually just supposed to be a little test demo, or they threw it out not thinking it would be anything. Turns out that they hit on the right combination of product features and interface and capabilities that just lit a rocket that hasn't stopped taking off yet. It's still accelerating. Their OpenAI Dev Day program, it was kind of a peek into what they've been working on. It was a status update into the state of the art for their respective field of LLMs and AI models and the things that you can create with them. It was a bit of marketing in there. It wasn't maybe as technical as would have liked. It was they had something for everybody. Funny story, full disclosure, I applied to be at Dev Day, and I was not accepted. On a lark, my wife applied, her being a PM at a software development company, may have had something to do with it. She got accepted, and so her company sent her. I tagged along, made a good faith effort to crash the party and get in. Security was very tight. But otherwise, kind of loitered outside, followed along with the videos, picked her brain, watched the technical talks in the time that they've released them, which, by the way, they've released all the technical talks on YouTube. I highly recommend everyone to go and get them. Aside from the networking component, there's nothing held back. It's all there for freely available consumption. So
what is the overarching theme that you felt after having been there, consumed it on the other channels, and just how do you feel about that event? The substance of the event, I should say.
It was good. They did a great job at presenting, at having something worthwhile to present, and kind of charting a path of where it's all going. So I suppose for some context, I don't know the degree to which you might be familiar with vibe coding.
A little bit, yeah.
A better term for this might be natural language programming. It's plain spoken language. Make me a thing to do a thing. Make it like this. Make it do this. Make it have these features. And vibe coding has been tremendous for a lot of people in that you can take someone with no software development experience or expertise, and maybe they can't do a mid-level software engineer's work. Maybe they can't even reach an entry-level software engineer's work, but they can do something. The tools are there that with little more than time and interest and attention, you can start getting the ball rolling and building things. So the big 3 bullet points of the show was, the first one is apps in ChatGPT. So they are becoming a platform. ChatGPT is becoming a platform. No longer might you go to, say, Zillow and want to look in this neighborhood for a house matching these specs and so on. But Zillow has offered their integration into ChatGPT so that ChatGPT is the interface. With full, rich widgets, pop-ups, feedback, API calls. And there's a saying that where the prompt is where the value is being captured. So
really,
because are you going to extrapolate it out? Or are you going to let it happen here, there, Claude, ChatGPT, whoever is receiving the prompt is ground zero? And
so is the prompt, when you in the example here you gave of Zillow, is it Zillow living inside of ChatGPT, or is it a ChatGPT sitting on top of Zillow?
No, a little of both. Zillow's opened up their backend and APIs to allow integration with ChatGPT, so that as much or as little as they would like, they're opening the kimono and letting them inside, so that now you have a new interface to these applications, be it Zillow, be it Figma, be it potentially your bank one day. As long as it gets the permissions, it can deliver whatever information they decide to share.
So does that mean you could stack several apps on top of each other?
Now you see where this is going.
Yeah.
Have a long form discussion with ChatGPT about the flow of a process you're working on, or a web app idea, and have Figma bring it in. And
What's Figma?
Figma is a graphic design application of sorts. It's what you develop a lot of front end parts or widgets or components. If you have an idea for a website and you want it to be pixel perfect, you can program it and get there. That's one way. The other way is to have a designer design what you're after and then pulling that in wholesale. So to what you were saying, no, you can absolutely start wandering all over to determine what applications might be pertinent and suitable. So maybe you use Figma to create something. You would use a different thing to, maybe you could put in Dropbox integration and say that thing you just made in Figma, save that out and store it locally, all from within ChatGPT. And they're still evaluating the monetization angle, because they don't want to just take, they want to give back. But it offers a lot of potential in terms of both monetization and discovery, because whereas you might just call Figma, do this, you might have a discussion, say, what's the best tool to create this asset that I need? And it'll go, oh yeah, you need Figma, here, plug it in, log in, rock and roll. So apps in ChatGPT, that's going to be a very big thing that is going to be ground zero. In fact, I think that kind of tangentially, all the money that Mark Zuckerberg has been throwing into the Ray-Bans and AR, VR, he got burned when Apple closed the door on a lot of tracking data. They flipped a switch overnight and Facebook lost a lot of data, and it hobbled them. And they've been dead set on never having the rug pulled out on them again. They wish to own the next platform, whatever that may be. They're betting on it being physical hardware on your face, glasses. It feels to me like ChatGPT just leapfrogged their aspirations and said, oh, want to talk about the next big platform shift? Check that out. So it's, again, probably moving in different vectors.
No, I get it. So the first one is the app integration. So there was 3, right?
Yeah.
What's the second one?
Second one is called Agent Kit. So this last 6-month AI sprint, it's been a lot in the realm of vibe coding and AI assistance. A lot of people aren't familiar with the term agent or what it means to be agentic. So an AI agent is one that can receive a query, think about it, dwell, ponder, call tools to do something, and then observe the state after it's done something to go through the loop again until complete. So as an example, telling your iPhone to send your mom a text message, that's technically an agent. It's receiving your prompt, it's determining what you want, identifying the tools necessary to do it, composing the text, sending it, and evaluating, okay, successfully sent, this task is done. Agents in software development are getting they're getting bigger legs, more legs to just sprawl into anything and everything, whether that's using your computer's mouse and keyboard, computer use, whether it's browsing the web, whether it's interfacing with other applications to get information, create a thing. So their agent building, the second bullet point, the agent builder has 3 subcomponents to it. One is the agent builder. It's a drag and drop. I don't know if you're familiar with N8N or Lindy. These are agent building platforms, low code, no code. You connect a bunch of wireframes.
That's right. Yep.
They built that. They basically just knocked off that whole realm of software. The second one being ChatKit. So the ease of which you can take your company's data and create something useful, internal, external, but chatbots specifically. The bar just got much lower in terms of the technical aptitude required to do that. So agent builder, ChatKit, and then the third thing is evals, evaluations. So when you build a model, when you fine tune a model, when you build an agent, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So these are tools to help you measure how well it's performing. How well is it doing the thing that you wish for it to do? How well is it conforming to your company's corporate communications requirements? How well is it actually giving the right answer? So an example is it's kind of like testing. You're familiar with test-driven development, maybe. A suite of evaluation software to help iterate and refine your agents to get better, as well as select the right level of intelligence.
Got it.
So again, a lot of people who don't swim in these waters, you can pick from a dozen different agents or models of varying intelligence, cost, and speed. You can just max it and say, I will pay any cost. I want the best possible answer. Take as long as you want. Or maybe it's what you're doing is much simpler. You don't need a rocket surgeon to answer every query. So now you can dial it to something more suitable in terms of time and cost. So helping you identify what level of intelligence you need.
Okay. So
model builder, ChatKit, evals. Then the third thing that they pressed on, they have, this is like a whole sector of thing, codecs. There are programming, let me back up. Once upon a time, you go to write some code, you would open up Visual Studio, VS Code. They started working on VS Code's Copilot, and it helps with coding. It went from completing a word to completing a line to completing an entire page of programming to entire applications. Other companies beat them to the punch before they were ready, though. One of the biggest ones out there that even Jensen Huang is in love with and mentioned publicly is Cursor. It started off as a fork of VS Code with agentic programming features baked into it natively. And so what that's looked like is you've got one panel of here's my code base and all the files. Middle one is here's the actual code that I have open. And the third one is a window to talk with something to go mess with those two other windows. we're still iterating. They're still iterating and refining what the optimal user interface looks like. We don't know. Like, they don't know. We're working it out, figuring it out. So it's gone from giant IDE programming environment to a command line interface. It works out of your terminal or your command line, in which you just talk to it, kind of like ChatGPT, but it's in your system. It is your computer. And so they're iterating towards that. It's almost like a headless AI. When you talk to it, you're not looking at the files it messes with. You're not looking at the outputs as much. You just instruct it on what you need it to do and let it cook. And so Codex is what started out by Claude or Anthropic. Mm-hmm. Claude Code, a lot of people may be familiar with. A lot of people are not. They came out with the first command line interface software developer called Claude Code, and people are moving to that space. Like, they identified a new beachhead of UI, and everyone is just jumping on board with it. Codex being the latest big one in terms of how they've scaled it, because it's not just a command line interface. You can run it on your ChatGPT app on your phone. You can run it in your browser. It lives in GitHub, so when you check in new software, mm-hmm. it runs and automatically does things. It's sprawling everywhere. So big three, apps and ChatGPT, Agent Kit,
right,
and Codex, and they just showed the ease of which you can begin creating and deploying with little to no code. And
that's the part, for our audience in particular, because they may not have the deep realm,
the
right?
technical
This is why
chops.
we brought you to talk about it. But I'd like to really bring in some more relevant and germane kind of activity and conversations about what this means for a business. So I went out there and I got a handful of interesting real world potential applications of what is happening here. And of course I used ChatGPT to give you the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't I? But there's some, I'm going to kind of talk about some of these things, and then maybe you can give some of your thoughts on it. The first thing that they said is agents everywhere.
Yep.
The idea of all these OpenAI and DeepMind and Microsoft Copilot and all these, where these agents are converging to an autonomous, to be able to use all kinds of tools that operate apps and browsers, mm-hmm. which is kind of crazy. And this will completely begin to unfold like now.
The future's already here. It's just not distributed evenly, right? So yeah, you've got that top 1% bleeding edge of agent all the things. I feel like most people, however, are still on a free plan of ChatGPT going, yeah, I'm down with AI. I've used some ChatGPT. When they're just only just begun scratching at the surface.
This is funny you say that. And I'm actually guilty of it as well. You talk to people that lived through the internet revolution. Mm-hmm. You talk to people that lived through the mobile revolution, right? And there's always this sort of trepidation of, oh man, I wish I would have gotten in earlier. ... Mm-hmm. Right? There's always this thing. Well, here is a new revolution. We're in the middle of this revolution. I wouldn't even say we're in the middle. We're in the beginning of the revolution. Mm-hmm. I heard a great analogy that right now, if you were to map how far along AI is, it's basically an amoeba. Mm-hmm. It's a single cell little organism with a tail cruising around, a pool of water.
I'd go sooner than that and just say it's like that first initial spark of life. Like it's not even to that degree. It's we are so early. It's ridiculous.
All right, here's another one. Compute sovereignty. OpenAI's Broadcom deal echoes Google's Amazon Microsoft custom silicon moves, mm-hmm. which is interesting that they're basically doing some early hardware integration and conversations to get NVIDIA out of the way, which kind of sounds crazy. Was that talked about at all?
I'm aware of a new deal that they're inking with AMD, which makes you wonder if they're not stepping on toes of, but if that signals some deterioration in the relationship between OpenAI and NVIDIA. That said, I feel like all these companies are in a position where they're going to sell every piece of hardware they make for the foreseeable future, and to the point that power is the limiting function now.
Yeah. Which is crazy. So, the company I run, IR Labs, we're in the business of making tools for the semiconductor industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're kind of at the forefront of some of this technology. The big conversation is about backside power and heat.
Mm-hmm.
We're having separate conversations with some new technologies that will potentially alleviate that. So all these things are kind of converging. We went to a quantum show about 6 months ago.
Did you or did you not? Or you're just more likely to have gone?
What?
Sorry, quantum joke.
Got it. But it's just crazy how these things are converging. So here's some use cases. I wanted to have some real world, quote unquote, use
Mm-hmm.
cases. And based on what you know, give me your thoughts. So personal scheduling and life assistant.
Yep. It's already begun. If you're on the $200 a month OpenAI ChatGPT plan, you get Prime Pump. They have a product that is so compute hungry that they're only letting the big spenders even touch it. That using what they're calling connectors, connect into your Gmail, connect into your Outlook, and will pull in all your information and start thinking about what's important to you, what's coming up, what should you be focused on, what do you want to be focused on.
Interesting.
What can we do in the background to just kind of maybe we'll do some digging to see what's relevant to you, that's either news or information, or all the way down to good morning. Don't forget you need to drop your daughter off at her dentist appointment at 10:30. Like that kind of preemptive.
Right. Yeah. So this is what it says: an AI agent that monitors your calendar, suggests optimal times, book slots, handles all the kinds of conflicts, reschedules, sends reminders, tracks deliveries, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of a virtual agent or virtual assistant, I mean, people use them today, right? But this is a different level.
Maybe like there's two kinds of software that I've been reading about: deterministic and non-deterministic. And I might be butchering the definitions. Forgive me if I am. Deterministic software, you run it, you get the same result each time. Non-deterministic software, you give it a prompt and it may say one thing, it may say another. 80% of the time, it should kind of get about the same result. Those kinds of agents or programs to do that exist now today. But in writing something that's a deterministic program, if this happens, do this, that's where there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to make that software where you don't have to plug an agent or an AI or a chatbot into everything. You can just use these to bang out little bits of software that add up to big savings of time.
Right. How about health and wellness companion? This is
do people want that good advice?
Well, there's already apps that do this, like MyFitnessPal and others that track your food, but it requires a lot of involvement.
You should go walk around now. You've been sitting for a while.
Yeah, but this tracks your data, your sleep, activity, diet, reminds you of medication appointments, will begin to give you more advice that it draws from presumably a wellspring of information to basically nudge you along the way. And rather than interface with it, having to open an app to do it, it's going to be more interactive. Maybe it'll send you a text message. Maybe it'll maybe give you a call. Who knows?
I think you're hitting on something where a lot of this, they're wanting to move. There's the target on the wall. There haven't been a lot of steps towards the target, but predictive technology, predictive apps, the idea that ChatGPT knows what you're about to ask before you ask it based on the context of maybe what it's heard, what you've done, what's on your calendar. But predictive technologies they've identified it as a target. People want to move towards it. And boy, when that one gets shaken out, that's gonna spook the normies.
Yep. Well, I'll read a couple here. These are all basically very much self-evident. So tutoring assistant, that's pretty self-evident. Personal finance and expense agent. Again, the idea of the connectors, which brings another conversation regarding safety and all that, security. and whether or not this agent is going to have access to all your data.
Mm-hmm.
But I have conversations with people that are hardcore, like they're not xenophobes per se, but they hate people. They want to just be in like the woods and not mess around. They think the government is out to get them, which is
what, our government?
Yeah, our government. And so they wouldn't even think about sharing any information about any of this. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, you're not that important.
There's that. And once upon a time, people never would have taken an Uber or an Airbnb.
Right.
Or even ride in an elevator without an operator. Like it.
Yeah. Don't get in a car with strangers was like one of the tenets of, if you're less than 10 years old, don't get in a car with strangers, because that was a big deal back in the day. Now there's like Lyft for kids, right? You can actually sign your kids up so they can get picked up by somebody and taken to class or whatever. It's insane. Content creation and media agent, pretty self-evident. Home personal automation agent. That one's kind of interesting. What are your thoughts on that one?
I'm here for it. Home automation agents, there's a hardware sector that needs more love. I know that Google's Nest and other companies are diving into that space, but a lot of people don't trust Google. And it seems like one of those things that ought to be open source. Like, why am I paying Ring Doorbell $9 a month to use a hard drive when why can't I use a hard drive that I have at home?
Yeah, that whole home automation thing, it always was very interesting to me from a conceptual level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it'd be great. This can manage my electricity better and this and that. But practical level, I just never really dove in. And now I'm kind of beginning to put my toe in the water, and it's a lot of fun.
I remember being younger, reading about Bill Gates's house and how smart it was, 20, 25 years ago. That, when he moves from room to room, the lights go on and off and the music follows, and little details like that of responsive, nuanced, intuitive features or magic.
Home as agent, right? Imagine that your home is alive.
Oof. What was the book, the short story about a smart house that was out of control? But
it's insane. And what I love about this time and age, people have, well, there's always the glass half full, glass half empty.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the third one saying the glass was designed wrong. I think that for me, I'm a totally like glasses half full, but give me more.
Early adopter.
I just love it, but at the same time, I see this for an entrepreneur or business person. It's the greatest time to be alive. Mm-hmm. It is so much opportunity right now to make money. I mean, I just listed off a handful of ideas that you already know people are working on it, but there's going to be a need for more.
Yep.
There's not just one soft drink. I mean, there's not just Coke. There's hundreds of different brands. Like, be part of that framework.
Well, I guess it comes back to, what is the intent? What is it that you want the house to do? To never have to clean again? To be more comfortable? To be safer? To know when you're going off to San Diego and your dog is making a mess?
Yeah, I guess these are all challenges that need to be looked at, for sure.
I see it coming.
It's all coming. So what would you say if you were across the table here from a young version of you, Blaine at 18 years old, and you had some magic seance where you could talk to Blaine and you can give Blaine a couple words of advice, what would you say to Blaine?
Drop everything and learn software development, like the world is ending. I've worked in hardware design, engineering, manufacturing for 15 plus years. And the number of years you have to put in to match entry-level software positions is enough to hurt your feelings. That there's this whole reindustrialize movement going on.
Yeah.
To onshore manufacturing, to boost American manufacturing, to expand it beyond the scope of just ITAR work, but full-fledged American manufacturing mayhem. And it just seems like the supply and demand is so out of whack that you can be a senior machinist, tool and die maker, 30 or 40 years experience under your belt. And compared to even a novice software developer, you're not going to outshine them in terms of compensation, which you don't want to tie everything to money, but it's an important
Yeah. Well, what about the idea that coding will become irrelevant with the advent of these software agents and whatnot?
Are you familiar with Jensen's paradox? It gets thrown around a lot with software development and vibe coding and AI assisted coding. The cheaper something gets, the demand doesn't fall off. It actually picks up. So as oil gets cheaper, the number of applications that someone can purpose oil for goes through the roof. And now the demand, sum total, is far greater than if the price had remained static. Same thing with software development. The need for software is not going to go away. In fact, now the threshold, the barrier to entry of, I have a small business. I have 10 or 12 employees. I don't have the bandwidth to hire a $120,000 a year software developer. But boy, if someone could just bang out a few programs, a few scripts, if someone could look at what I'm doing and find ways to save time on the low effort or low ROI activities so that you can focus on the strategically important things, the demand for that is going to balloon, in my opinion.
Okay.
That you're going to see a lot of demand pick up there.
So there's always a part B. And the part B is if you were to have a similar seance, maybe a different day, and you're looking at a 75-year-old Blaine across the table with a long beard.
Oof.
What would you ask Blaine 75? Where one you're telling and the other one you're asking.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's. I didn't know you were going to go all deep on me. Did you make it to Maui? And if I didn't, then I would need to adjust course somewhere.
Yeah, I know the reference.
So
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, these
figure out how close you came to your target so that you could adjust fire and see if you'd come a little closer to the mark.
What's crazy, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts too, is it's definitely an exercise in a different form of thinking about your future, your past, your present. And what's common between all three is it's you. And all we have is now. I mean, now I'm going to get all stoic on you, but the idea is, all we have is now, and we need to make the best of what we have. I mean, the Stoic principles really, they start off with sort of wisdom and courage are the bedrocks, right? Because with wisdom comes from making lots of mistakes. Wisdom comes from a certain level of self-sometimes. And then the courage is one of those things that it's not really talked about. It seems as though you're only courageous if you go into a burning building to save a kid or a cat or whatever. Courage comes in a lot of different forms.
Can't fake it.
You got to go out there. You got to make mistakes. I'm glad you have that sentiment about making mistakes. I'm all for a family structure that really celebrates and encourages failure. Mm-hmm. Because as kids, you're taught exactly the opposite, right? You get a B or something, you get a C, you get a
huge culture divide. I was reading, I forget what company it was. I think it was maybe somewhere in South Korea. But culturally, they celebrate failure in a way that is different than here in America, where we hide it. We play it down. We try to minimize it. Whereas there, at their Christmas celebration or whatever, their annual all hands meetings, they, what was the biggest mistake we made this year? What was and there's no shame to it. We're not going to beat somebody up over it. But I always looked at it like you've paid for a lesson in that mistake. You got burned. You touched the stove and got burned. You may as well reap the benefit from it and show your friends and go, stove, hot, check this out. And so many companies, they if you were to suggest at 100 companies, we should make a boo-boo list. Yeah. We should have a thing on the wall. And every time you make a mistake that costs more than X dollars, put your name and the context in there to disseminate the information, to share the lesson. That would not go over well.
Especially this culture, yeah.
And
I was part of this thing, and I'm not sure if it's still going on. It's called F-Up Nights. Mm-hmm. This is the PG-13 show, so I can't say the real word. F-Up Nights, which is a night where entrepreneurs come to the table. There's usually 3 or 4 speakers, and they spend 15, 20 minutes basically detailing all the F-ups they've had in business, And there's usually booze involved, but it doesn't have to, you can be a teetotaler, fine. But the idea is that you share these experiences in a forum where people can ask questions, and it's presumed that you've achieved some level of success and you're not just a complete failure. But even then, complete failures, you can learn a lot from
a winning failure
from who fail all the time. I mean, I have friends that are like, they've made a ton of money, they've lost a ton of money. They've had love, they've lost love. And I don't hold them at any level different than people that I know that make tons of money.
I got one for you.
Sure.
How many startups do you have under your belt? Failed startups. How many skeletons in that closet?
20.
Really?
At least.
You have 20 LLCs, EINs, corporations under your belt. Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, they're not all alive.
Well,
right. So the ones that are alive are probably like 5 or 6.
But that made $1 and then wound down.
Yeah.
I feel I've maybe got 2 or 3. In every single one, there's a myriad of lessons you can take from it, but it always stands out. There's like that one big lesson.
Mm-hmm.
What's one of the big lessons you've learned from one of your crash outs?
Man, I had a company we were developing. The scientist was developing a new kind of fuel injector for the diesel industry that atomized the fuel in a much better way in XYZ. And I remember we brought a lawyer in that was going to also bring money in the table. And I remember a conversation I had with the founder, who was a Russian scientist that actually designed the Soyuz rocket nozzle. So this guy was literally a rocket scientist, brilliant guy. And the lesson I learned was twofold in this particular startup. The first of which is, don't give a kid in a candy store too much candy. Because the minute we received money, the kid in the candy store, which was not me, was the Russian scientist. We won't say who he is, but he spent it all. Literally spent it all. I mean, I raised this money and he just went off
like water.
Crazy. So that's the first thing. You got to, and you know, we could have rented things, he bought things like that. Mm-hmm. He brought in his family to work for us, which I was like, where did this come from? So everything, that's number one. The second thing is this lawyer I talked about earlier. He put a contract across the table for this guy to sign, and he signed it, and he gave it to me before he gave it to the lawyer. And I spent 5 minutes going to quick glance, and I found a buried clause that said that he would give the lawyer the entirety of the company if certain things that were like going to happen were to happen. So read the contract. 2 lessons.
Oofta.
The one that actually resonates the most, that's the reason that I have this podcast. That's the reason that I have really changed the direction that I do business. I mean, it's like fundamental. The reason, the big thing, had to do with a moment when I had my company Azterra. I had grown it very quickly, had a beautiful building, had all this stuff happening. The market started to change, and our revenues dipped down a bit, and I was like, what's happening here? I went to my advisors. I had some advisors that were almost like a informal board of directors.
Yep.
And I kind of presented what was happening. And to a one, they all gave me the same advice, which was all wrong. They said, you know, all this chatter, all this noise that's pulling you away, get rid of it. Focus on your core. Lean in, you know, nose to the grindstone. Just what got you successful, that's what is going to get you to successful. Stick with that. And I'm like, but nope, stay with your core, follow your core. That's it.
And your intuition was telling you otherwise.
My intuition was like, something's wrong here. I need to do something different. And 18 months later, I closed down my business.
Damn.
What had happened is the market shifted. Those voices that were calling my name were the new trends that were calling me to follow it. And the idea of following my core is what killed my company. And that came with a lot of heartache. That was a huge lesson for me. Years later, I met a guy named Adam Hartung, who was a Vistage speaker, and literally stood up and said, never follow your core, always follow trends. That to me was set me in a new direction of understanding why trends are so important.
Mhm.
And so that was huge. That's my number one lesson right there.
Was it Darwin said, nature doesn't favor the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest, but that which best adapts to change.
100%.
So everyone that's listening needs to adapt to the change that is going on with ChatGPT and other models and focus heavily. Because I've had some interactions with other managers and executives, and one of the trends I'm seeing is that looks really good. And I might even like to have some of that process internalized and utilized, but I don't need to be the one that does it. And all culture comes from the top. Everything trickles down. If you don't have buy-in at the highest level, if you don't have that founder authority almost, or that person that points and doesn't suggest, doesn't nudge, but actually sounds the alarm, and we're all going to freaking die if we don't get with the program, because someone else will eat your lunch. Someone else will send their kid to private school instead of yours because you failed to adapt, or whatever your goals are.
Yeah. Well, there's a great saying by Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
I added the following. But trends set the menu.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% agree. I mean, the culture needs to come from the top. And it's kind of twofold, right? The culture trickles down from the top, but also comes up from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen and I've worked for CEOs that were basically mini tyrants.
Mm-hmm.
They'd come in, and if you didn't like the way that they were doing things, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fine. They're welcome to do whatever
Works
they
for
want.
Elon, yeah.
Then I've worked for others that are the opposite. It's all kumbaya, and there's whatever, anybody can do whatever they want. And that doesn't work either, in my opinion. I think the first one works more monetarily. The second one, there's not enough leadership, and there's not enough this is the framework from which you can play and draw inspiration and resources. Go. So when I became a CEO early on, I tried different techniques and whatever. And the way I do things now, and this is very public, I've said it many times, I have 2.5 jobs as a CEO. Number one, set and execute the vision of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, block and tackle. Meaning my employees need something, I block and tackle. I make those things happen, resources. And the 0.5, the reason it's kind of a 0.5 is because it's more done under the hood, is I develop my team. I help them grow.
Talent, recruitment.
Recruitment, retention, expansion, all that. But it's not truly for me, COOs are better at that, but sometimes I lean in to at least enable that to happen.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd read this somewhere, but it always seemed like that was actually the number one job of a CEO is to have the vision, share the vision, beat the drum, repeat yourself, but then to focus more highly on acquiring the talent to execute.
100%.
Because it seems that a lot of people fall into the trap of, I'll just do it. I could do it in an hour by myself for 2 hours with your help. So I'll do it. I got it.
Yeah. And that's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake.
Can't trust, can't let go.
A lot of CEOs
can't tolerate mistakes.
Are very much control freaks.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily I've never have been, but I have friends that are. And they sign every paycheck. They sign every check that goes out that door. And these are $100 million companies.
Oof.
And they want to be involved in all these conversations, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk is very much like that, right? He knows a lot about everything in his companies, and that's his thing. The other half of the podcast, right, is the mind and the market, the mind side. And we want to create entrepreneurs and business people that are grounded and have joy and peace in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I have friends that have two friends that passed away, both around 50 years old. I don't know if due to stress, I don't know what. These were both very healthy guys,
mm-hmm.
both runners, both at the top of their game, and they both died instantly. And then I have two other friends that also died from other reasons, more sickness in their 50s.
The one I always hear about is retirement. The retirement is always what gets you. Left without a mission.
It's very true. How can folks get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you?
I'm on Twitter under Optomachina. I don't know if you ever saw Ex Machina, but my background's primarily been in optomech, so Optomachina.
Okay.
I have a Substack that I think I've written an article or two on called Shop Noise. Put like a state of the art, or was it the state of AI a couple of quarters ago? It needs to be updated and revised. And it's been interesting to follow it from helping with software to handling software. And now it's where everyone's choking on writing bad software. Like vibe coding is a great way to produce lots of slop. So the trends and techniques of how to constrain and control that and get the results you need. That'd be a good topic for another time.
Awesome. And thanks for your time, Blaine. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah, buddy.